Hi everybody, Dr. Hopewell here with Dr. Lynn. We wanted to record a brief introduction to using some of the tools that we have provided for you in this module and go over some important resources for writing the literature review. So, the first thing that we wanted to talk about was the fact that we have a self-evaluation tool that is very important. So I'm going to bring that self-evaluation tool up and we're going to take a look at it together.
Okay, so when you look at this, it might look a little mind-boggling. This is Dr. Lynn. But our intention in writing it this way is that you should be able to look at these things point by point and just look at, have I accomplished that task, or have we, in writing a collaborative review of literature, have we actually accomplished that, and have we done it fully or partially, or have we just totally missed that and not gotten that done? So the main areas, when you look at the assignment guide, the self-evaluation is on the very last page. The main areas is the synthesis of relevant information. That's really your task for the review of literature, is summarizing succinctly but clearly what you learned by going out there and reading all those great resources. The second section of the self-evaluation is professional writing. And so this is the area that we've kind of talked about in our coaching sessions of making that switch now to becoming a writer of action research, which is a little different than anything that most people have written. And we follow the APA 6 style as a general rule. If there's a reason that you think a different model of writing is more appropriate, for instance, if you're looking at a specific journal that uses a different style of writing, and you're thinking about maybe doing a CRP down the line, then you need to talk to each of us individually and we'll talk you through that. The third section on the self-evaluation is references. Very important part of your review of literature. It's the last pages after you've done all of that synthesizing of your information. And again, using APA 6. And the goal that you're shooting for is to have 10 highly relevant resources. Some from prior research, some from theory, and some from professional literature or those pedagogy type of resources. And so 10 is your goal, but don't select a resource that really isn't relevant to your topic just to hit a magic 10. I prefer to have them be really highly relevant. Dr. Hopewell, what is your thought on that?
I agree. I've had students in the past try and do what I call reference padding. And so you go down to the reference page and there's 15 citations, and then you go back and you read through the paper and you only find 7 of those. Well, if you didn't reference it in your text, don't put it in your reference section.
Okay, great. And then the fourth and final section of that self-evaluation is Writing Center Consultation, and that's the BHSU Writing Center. One of the things that you'll do is after you have drafted your review of literature, you'll go online. We've provided helpful links and content for you to be able to access the Writing Center, and you'll schedule a time with them. You'll submit their document, your document. They will review it. And then during an online consultation, they'll give you feedback that will help you enhance your review of literature before you submit it to Dr. Hopewell or I, whoever is your instructor. One of the things that for you to know, so you know it's something you don't have to worry about, they send us as the professor documentation that you completed that task, and also a brief summary of some of the main recommendations they gave you. So you don't have to worry about getting something and submitting that in the Dropbox. The Writing Center does that for you. Okay, so the next thing we want to jump to is a tool that we have in content, and I would really highly recommend, before you start doing too much of the writing, review the resources that we've given to you in content. There's just a wealth of resources that should take some of the headache and the question out of how do I write a review of literature for an action research proposal. One of the tools that we put in there is Review of Literature Top 10 from your professor document. And so we're going to put what we're going to do Instead of showing you that, I'm going to recommend that you pull that up, print it, or have it open while you're watching this video, because we're going to show you an actual review of literature that was written by a previous student and show you what does that look like, because sometimes it helps us to actually see what we're trying to accomplish. So I'll have Dr. Hopewell pull up an example that was written by a student. And we're going to just highlight some things that are actually on that review of literature top 10. One of the reasons that we assembled this top 10 list is to save time for all of us. One, take some of the guesswork out of what you should be doing to write it originally. Then you don't have to get a lot of feedback from the Writing Center saying, you know, you need to correct this, correct this, correct this. You start out from the front end knowing what you're doing. Also, it saves us, very honestly, Dr. Hopewell and Dr. Lynn, time in editing and giving you feedback so we can really focus on the content of your writing and not the structure of your writing so much. And then third, it saves you additional time in not having to rewrite so much. So take a look at that top 10 list. So we're going to look at that and just call your attention to a couple of things. When you look at this document here, one of the first things that you notice in the top of the header is in all caps, utilizing graphic organizers to enhance reading comprehension. That's referred to as a running head. You will not have that at this point in time when you're writing a review of literature, because what the running head tells the reader is this is the focus of this action research. So this is something you'll be adding later when you actually know what it is you're planning to focus on for your study. But you'll also know to the right is a number, page 8. So that's the pagination. The number of the page is always on the far right-hand margin, right-hand justified. Okay. The body of your review of literature on the top 10, it says a couple of main things. Times New Roman 12 font is the standard. Double line spacing, and you can see that between all of the lines of the paragraph. And then a double click space bar between, or 2 clicks between the sentences. So I'll let Dr. Hopewell share with you some information about a tool that he can guide you to that'll help you, train you on that.
So in the content area, you'll find a link to a web page, just kind of a tips and tricks for Microsoft Word, and we've directly linked you to the process, step by step, how to set your Microsoft Word program to automatically do the 2 spaces at the end between sentences. I would seriously and highly recommend that you go and do that. It will save you a ton of time and frustration going back and trying to figure out if you have a double space between each of your sentences. There is a way you can check to see. I'll slide my screen up here. This button right here will reveal all of the structural keystrokes that you've made. So this is an indent, this is a paragraph, and then you'll see a dot represents a space. And between each paragraph, as we've highlighted here, you have 2 spaces. But you would have to go back and examine your whole document for that. I'm going to try and save you a whole lot of time and recommend that you put the setting on automatic double space between. And again, that link is in the content section for this module.
Okay, so when you start writing using APA 6th format, again, usually because it's a different format that most of us have used in writing anything else that we've done, sometimes, quite honestly, it seems nitpicky. And you find yourself thinking, oh my goodness, why in the world are they so particular about this? One of the main reasons is they want it to be very easy for the reader to focus on what you've written so that they can digest the information and not get lost in the text. And another reason is if you're actually writing at some point to submit for a journal, they are very, very particular about the format that you use in a specific journal. So it's a standard that they set. So a couple of things that we want to start with is a bit up at the top of the review of literature, right under that running head, you see review of literature. What that tells the reader is this is the section of the proposal, and that's referred to as a main section heading. And you can see that it's bold font. And again, that's one of the readability factors. It makes it easy for the reader to find out where is that review of literature in my whole action research proposal that I'm reading. The very next section, and this is number 7 on our top 10 list. Number 7 talks about the first paragraph, right under that review of literature. What you're trying to do is cue the reader into what kind of information are you going to be reading in this section of my action research proposal. So it might call it, you can notice that this student called attention to the importance of reading and the complexity of reading. And then at the end of that first paragraph, the student says, this review of literature will explore theory, prior research, and pedagogy related to fostering reading skills for students who are diagnosed with reading learning disabilities. So that student is giving us a cue as readers. What am I going to learn here by reading this? The very next thing, number 8 on the top 10 list, is a subheading. Characteristics of students with learning disabilities in reading. And so she's again cueing the students, or the reader, what is this next section about? And so she's going to highlight information that she's found, the understanding that she now has by reading those resources about what are the characteristics that she needs to be aware of for the potential participants for her study. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and skip down to, let me just see if Dr. Hopewell, did you have any comments about that? Subheadings?
No, I think I think that if you, all in all, if you pay attention to these top 10 and all the resources, you're going to have a much easier time writing and constructing your literature review. If you need to go back and adjust things, like this sentence here gives a very clear understanding of what the study's about, you may need to go back and adjust those later as the study formulates and focuses. That's okay. You may just want to make a note to yourself in the text.
Okay, so under each subheading, what you're trying to do here is to synthesize key information related to that heading. And so you can see here that the paragraphs are really succinct. The very first paragraph, the student is summarizing in her own words, okay? She's not saying this is what I think. She's saying this is what I understand the experts are saying, and including those citations. Citations are the next 2 things that we really want to call attention to. In that first paragraph, you can see that she's saying, unfortunately, over 80% of students, blah, 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 and ends with the citation. If there's 2 authors, it's always the last name of each author, and in content, you'll see some resources that show you how to cite references based on the number of authors and those types of things. The very next paragraph, she uses a citation along with a direct quote. So she's citing Taberski, 2011, and now you can see that she's saying this is exactly what Taberski says in this particular resource. How much a reader already knows about the subject is probably the best predictor of reading comprehension. And she follows it with the quotation mark and then parentheses, the page number where that quote is found. And that's very, very important because that distinguishes for the reader the difference between you summarizing information in your own words and then statements that are specifically from an expert in that particular focus or topic area. Dr. Hopewell, anything else you want to emphasize about that?
Be very careful that you use the quotation marks and page numbers. We can tell often when you're quoting from someone, but we want to be sure that you do that and give them credit for it.
Okay, so, and again, look at the punctuation. It's the quote, quotation mark, the quote, quotation mark, parentheses, P period, number, parentheses, ended with punctuation. Many times students end with the quotation mark and leave that sentence floating without ending with the end punctuation. Okay, so that's the top 10.